MANX MADE, supported by iomfoodanddrink.com.
Hello and welcome to MANX MADE, a new 3-part Island Life series with me, Michelle James. We will be uncovering some of the island's most exciting food and drink products, from salt to rum to ice cream. Let's go behind the scenes and find out exactly what goes into making these MANX MADE products. A big thank you to iomfoodanddrink.com for supporting the series. On tonight's episode, we discover the process behind making Manx rum. And to do this, I journeyed up to the north of the island to meet Ian Warburton-Jones and Rick Dacey, the brains behind Outlier Distilling Company. Based at Ballakelly Farm, the duo have spent the last few years developing their sustainable spirits using Manx ingredients. But where on earth do you start when it comes to making rum? Well, journey with me. It's Wednesday morning, we're in Andreas, and it's blowing 60-mile-an-hour winds, and we're in a milking shed. Yes, we are still talking about making rum.
It was a borderline derelict milking shed when we came in, so it'd basically just been used for storage for the past 30, 40 years. So we walked in and it was very much kind of like borderline Halloween-y, you know, like thick cobwebs hanging down, thick dust on the floor. So it took us a good couple of months to kind of clean it up and then kind of, you know, do some very basic joinery. Neither of us are skilled masons or joiners, so that was an interesting learning curve. But that was coming out of lockdown in 2020. So we have since converted it into a working craft distillery. So we've got a small pot still, about 150 litres, and we produce rum, schnapps. We've made a honey liqueur, and we've dabbled with a bit of moonshine as well. But the main thing we make is Hooley White Manx rum and Hurricane Overproof Manx rum, both of which are lovely.
And I presume when you found the building, the idea to form a distilling company was there?
Yeah, I mean, it was Ian who came up with the idea originally because he was working as a distiller elsewhere. His background's in winemaking. And he had met Alan and Rachel and liked the idea of actually trying to make some estate spirits. So, you know, possibly growing crops here and then keeping everything up until it's bottled and, sort of, you know, making some Manx whiskey. However, obviously, making whiskey takes a few years. So we thought, actually, we both like rum, so let's start with rum first. So whiskey is still on the agenda. But yeah, sometimes we bite off more than we can chew.
Where did you kind of begin? If you look at your branding, it's of a certain feel. It's of a really distinct, cool, quirky vibe. Did you instantly find that, or did you have it all planned out? Was there a business plan?
There was a business plan. Obviously, we are nowhere anywhere near in that realms. But no. We kind of played around with different names for the company, and actually we kind of realised that Outlier kind of quite suited us both geographically, because you're in the Isle of Man and you're in the northern part of the Isle of Man, so very much an outlier, but also kind of philosophically speaking, we kind of liked the idea of trying to do things a little bit differently or do it our own way. So the idea is, because of the volumes we're producing, we don't necessarily need to do things that will appeal to like a broad mass market, because it's currently just two of us, and it's some way before we'll be competing with the likes of Diageo. So in terms of the look and feel, the idea was to try and for the bottles was we didn't want things feeling like they were too design led. So the idea is, if you look at our labels, they look a bit like a picture frame, and so the idea is for different spirits that we use different local artists. So we've used Meg Steadhead, who's a tattoo artist and done different murals, which you may have seen at Secret Pizza or down in Castletown. So she's done our rum bottles. We've used Kieran Hannafin, for Hedge Fund, which is our Manx Schnapps, and we have used Capelena, who also another very good mural artist, and she did Honey Bun, and very different styles. But the idea with each of them was we didn't want to be too prescriptive, so we kind of gave a relatively loose brief and then let them interpret it. One of the little metrics for success we have is like, if you go into someone's house who has any bottle of our booze, is that bottle kind of, whether consciously or subconsciously, is it pushed to the front of the shelf? You know, is it something on display? And more often than not, it is. So we kind of feel that's kind of a tick. We want something. We're fine with it being a bit polarising, because we'd far rather there was 1,000 people who really liked something we did rather than 10,000 who kind of thought it was all right. And so far it's going pretty well.
So, with a combination of Manx ingredients and locally inspired design, Outlier Rum has already made its mark further afield.
You went to the London Rum Festival recently.
Yep.
What was it like bringing a product from the Isle of Man to a kind of worldwide rum extravaganza?
Well, initially when you turn up to Rumfest as two guys who are making rum in a shed, there's massive imposter syndrome. But that quickly went for two reasons. One, it turns out the whole kind of like rum community on both sides of the stalls are like incredibly welcoming, incredibly friendly. It's actually a really nice community to be part of. But we found sort of guys from London, guys from Trinidad, guys from all over were coming and trying our rum. Were really impressed. So that instantly took a bit of pressure off. And then from there, actually, we were getting a lot of kind of like bloggers and reviewers who were unofficially kind of choosing us as one of their best in shows. So it was a huge relief. And really exciting. So I think Ian and I have slightly different approaches. So I think Ian was really, really excited about all the rave reviews, whereas for me it was just a huge relief, because it's like, oh God, have we been believing our own hype? No, it turns out the rum we're making is actually really, really good.
And is the plan in the future to hopefully expand and get your products all across the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's step by step. I mean, we've kind of got two prongs at the moment, which is one is to try and get well established on the island, and we've been taking steps for that, and we've had some really good sort of local support. I'm at risk of missing people out, but people like Andy Quidzin and Bennett the Ginger Hall, Wes at Jack's, and the wine cellar guys. I mean, there's lots of people, and the community does a lot to kind of help people trying to set up a business, which is great. And we've had government support as well from DEFRA, and those guys have been very useful. But the next step is the UK, but we're in good talks with distributors there, and obviously from that point it can go elsewhere. But I think it's try and take it one step at a time. But sure, yeah, if we end up being listed in some cool Brooklyn bars, that would be amazing. Yeah.
And what is it about the product or the products that encompasses the Isle of Man?
Well, for one, everything is made on site. So obviously you're not growing sugarcane in the Isle of Man, but we import the molasses, which come from Guyana, but then everything else is done on site. So we use water from the farms well, so you do get elevated manganese levels, which, according to Ian, definitely helps make the rum. He very much makes the rum. So then everything else is done on site here, and it's all bottled here. And like I said, we use different local artists. So the idea is that we wanted to lend on kind of the Isle of Man as it is today, as opposed to kind of have anything too historical, because neither Ian or myself are from the Isle of Man, but you know, there's a fine history of kind of like come-overs and stay-overs, of which we're now kind of entering that pantheon, hopefully.
You're listening to MANX MADE with me, Michelle James, a new 3-part Island Life series showcasing the island's best food and drink products. A big thank you to IOMfoodanddrink.com for supporting the series. Tonight, we're learning about the process of making rum and how you do it from an old milking shed in Andreas. Well, Ian Warburton-Jones has the answers. First of all, what exactly is rum, Ian?
Rum is produced from either sugarcane juice or from molasses or from any sort of product of sugarcane.
Right, so essentially the field's quite wide open?
Yeah, relatively. I mean, there's a lot of work being done at the minute to sort of put some more legal definitions about it, but yeah.
But it's not just rum we're talking about this evening. The Outlier duo started with a different spirit.
The first thing we made was Hedge Fund, which is 100% foraged wild berry schnapps. So we pick all the fruit from the farm, and from my garden, and from a couple of other people in the area who donate us the fruit. It all comes from the north of the island. That's a 45% clear Germanic Black Forest style schnapps, but very limited quantities, commercially completely not sensible to make. So the main product we make is Hooley, which is unaged, twice distilled white rum.
And we are in quite a windy, essentially a converted milking shed.
Yeah. I mean, up here on the northern plain, it can get quite windy. I think it's blowing 45 miles an hour out there at the minute. So yeah, we call it Hooley.
And behind us is something that looks almost like a time machine. What are we looking at? So
this is a 150 litre pot still from the Adrian factory in Western Germany. It's built in 1994. It's a bain-marie still. It's completely heated with wood. So, they could cut off the gas and the electricity and we'd still be making booze tomorrow.
Wow, so there's literally no electricity coming through here?
Not through the equipment, no. I mean, I always joke, I think the thing that uses the most electricity in the building is probably the internet. We're very analogue, very stripped back. All of the processes involved with making the booze are heated using wood. What
is the first step of the process?
Okay, so we buy molasses, which a lot of people on the island will know because it's used as feed. It's a byproduct of the sugar refining process. It's thick, black, treacly liquid. In the summer, it flows quite quickly. In the winter, it doesn't flow very quickly at all. And that's what we take. So we, for each ferment, we ferment in 1,000 litre batches. We take 200 litres of molasses and water from the Len Trench, which we heat in an old sherry barrel.
And that's what we can see here.
Yeah, that's right. Rather sort of Heath Robinson way of achieving hot water without gas, but it works. So we've got a 450 litre old sherry butt there, plugged into a hot tub boiler. That does the job.
And then where do we go?
So at that stage, we make sure it's diluted properly, thoroughly. For that, we use a cement mixer.
Tricks of the trade.
Tricks of the trade. It works. And then my winemaking background comes in, so we use a pretty trick yeast, which gets us a very strong, high fermentation. We've got the right nutrition strategy, so we can really get the most out of the molasses.
Right, and where does that happen? That also happens all in the sherry bar?
That happens in, we ferment in IBCs in the corner room there, which is the barrel aging room. It's the most sort of temperature steady room in the whole building. We cover the tanks as well so they can retain their heat. We tend to ferment for 10 to 14 days, which is a very, very slow fermentation for rum.
Interesting. So once we've taken our time, we've got our 2 weeks in through the back room, then where are we at? Okay,
so what we tend to do is actually we leave the wash on the dead yeast for a couple of weeks, and that really increases the flavour. It's a process called autolysis, where the dead yeast imparts flavour into the wash. And once that's complete, then we distill it.
And then what? And then you distill it?
So the still's very small. It's a bain-marie still. So essentially it's like a sealed kettle on top of a water bath. We pump 150 litres into the still, shut it up. We add some anti-foam because molasses foams like crazy. Once it's hot, from wash, it takes 2.5 to 3 hours to start running spirit. So essentially, it's a boiling in a controlled environment, so that the alcohol vapour rises off the liquid earlier than water vapour does, and that's how we collect the alcohol.
So from start to finish, how long is one bottle kind of take?
2 to 3 weeks.
So
yeah.
It's quite a quick turnaround compared to something like wine that I presume are.
Yeah. We got lucky with Hooley. Being able to sell what is essentially new make spirit is pretty handy. Most white rums you see on the market are aged for a couple of years and then they have the colour stripped out. Ours is young, fresh, vibrant, and it works really well.
And surrounded by various stages of rum making, I couldn't resist getting a bit closer to some of the spirit mid-process.
What's in here? What we're seeing a big silver, essentially a bucket.
It's a stainless steel tank. So it's food grade stainless steel, completely inert. The thing with Hooley is when it's once distilled, it's very, very strong. It's like the flavours are too much. So essentially the process is dialing that back. So we distill it twice and we carbon filter it. And that's what makes Hooley delicious, but you can still taste stuff 2 weeks later.
What length of time has this been in there?
About 18 hours.
18 hours, right, okay.
Well, I was distilling it yesterday.
Let's have a smell then.
So there you go.
So it's pretty new.
Yeah.
And that is enough. That is enough to knock you to sleep, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
oh, it's right in the back of my throat.
I'm just still alright. It doesn't get me so bad. But what you get in there is all the components of Hooley. That strong, grassy, sort of burnt caramel, like roasted pineapple. All the cool stuff is there, but it's just too much. So we have to take it back in order to be able to sell it.
And listeners will literally be able to hear the absolute Hooley that is going on.
Joys of having a tin roof. Yeah.
It is wild.
Yeah.
And so you've come to this with quite a background in drinks. Has it always been your passion, your drive?
I think so. I mean, I tried to be a teacher, but I didn't last very long. So I did my degree in winemaking in Sussex in the early 2010s and wound up in the trade in London selling wine to extremely wealthy people who never saw it, and then moved to the island, and here we are making rum in a Hooley. Yeah.
Where's your favourite product amongst the ones we've got in front of us here?
I don't know. I mean, so we've developed the proper Manx daiquiri. Now, daiquiri is a very classic rum cocktail. It's rum, lime juice, and simple syrup. So we take 50 ml of Hooley, 25 ml of lime juice, 20 ml of simple syrup, and that makes a great daiquiri on its own. But if you spike it in the top with 7 ml of Hurricane, it's a world-beating daiquiri. Yeah.
Where's this world-beating title kind of come from? Is it self-proclaimed?
Yes. No, we've just been to Rumfest in Earl's Court in London, and we two guys in a shed from Andreas standing in a room with Mount Gay, Foursquare, Chairman's Reserve, all the big global rum producers. And you know what? People liked it, and people were really keen on the daiquiri.
And where would you like to see your products go as time continues?
Well, we've just it's looking like we've just signed a distribution deal with a big UK supplier. So hopefully you'll start seeing outlier products all over the UK pretty soon.
And is this production setup doable to kind of continue to upscale? Or you look terrified.
Yeah, I mean, it'll work. It'll certainly work in the short term. We will probably just need to bring in a night shift and run the still more. We can run the still 5 times a day pretty easily. If we run it 8 times a day, then then all of a sudden we're making an awful lot more booze and we can supply.
The Manx Daiquiri. That sounds a bit of me. So back to Rick Dacey to talk me through how you would make 2 excellent Manx cocktails.
Well, first of all, I'm going to introduce you to our simple serve. So it's Hooley rum, just served simply with ginger ale. You can use other ginger ales. We tend to use Fever Tree currently. So 25 ml of Hooley, and then a bottle, so about 200 ml of ginger ale over ice with a twist of lime. It's a really kind of refreshing alternative to a G&T. So if you think about it, it's kind of like more complex than a G&T, less challenging than a whiskey American. So just a really nice kind of flavoursome, quite rounded long drink.
We've got the ice in the bottom of the glass.
Exactly. So so doing this at home is very easy. So ice in, Hooley in, bit of ginger ale, and then we would recommend wedge of lime. I mean, obviously, better if you've done a Blue Peter prepared one earlier, but if not, there we go. Little squeeze, drop in, and then you make a radio presenter try it. So I'll hold your mic. There you go.
Right, so it's looking lovely. Nice. So you get the fizz, then you get the ginger, and then you get the rum for me.
Exactly. So the idea is that it's but it's kind of refreshing and effervescent. But there's that kind of like slightly malty, licoricey, slightly berry kind of taste underneath to give a kind of more rounded taste. Because a lot of people have kind of got bored with their kind of like go-to drink, so we're trying to provide a simple alternative.
You're going to have this at the pub, at the bar, as a kind of on its own.
Yeah, exactly. So just like a simple serve. So my wife is now a converted Hooli ginger drinker. I prefer drinking it as a daiquiri, but I would quite happily smash a couple of Hooli gingers as well.
Super refreshing, really nice.
So next up, we're going to make a daiquiri. This is going to take a little bit longer, so you might need a fast forward in a second. But you can use a shaker, or if you don't have that, you can just simply use a jam jar, right? So all you need to do is throw some ice in. Then we recommend doing it with 50 ml of Hooli, 25 ml of lime juice, and then 20 ml of simple syrup.
So where would you get something like this?
So, simple syrup is very easy to make. It's something you want to do in advance, but basically you get a saucepan, you get a cup of sugar, white sugar, get a cup of water, so same amount, put it in, heat it slowly until it all dissolves, and then you've got simple syrup. You can leave it in a jar, and that will sort of keep for weeks in the fridge. And simple syrup is a kind of staple of cocktail making, so, it's just a good thing to have if you want to play around with cocktails at home. So there we go. So you pour that in, close, and then shake vigorously. Okay. So the idea is that when you're shaking it, it's obviously really chilling all the contents, but also that's breaking a lot of the ice down. So you're diluting the contents somewhat, but you also get all these lovely little icy particulates that come through when you drink the daiquiri. So then, simple pour. And there we have a classic daiquiri.
Lovely. Right, I'll hand over the mic.
Okay.
So different. Quite. You get the sourness through on that. Where's that coming from?
Well, the lime primarily.
And there you have it. World-class Manx made rum and spirits, all from a milk shed in Andreas. Another incredible example of what the Isle of Man food and drink scene has to offer. You've been listening to MANX MADE with me, Michelle James. Thanks again to iomfoodanddrink.com for supporting the series. I'll be back at the same time next week for the final instalment, where I get to find out how to make salt on the Isle of Man using seawater, sun, and wind. That's next Thursday at 6 p.m. See you then.
MANX MADE, supported by iomfoodanddrink.com. Add one locally grown or produced product to your basket when shopping. These small considerations can have a big, cumulative community effect and support our food and drink producers.